This podcast mainly focuses on exploring how the blaster sound was originally created. We want to understand not just the sound itself, but also the story behind it. For planning, we decided to record a solo podcast in my bedroom using a simple home setup. The room is relatively quiet, so there's not much background noise. The acoustics are actually pretty decent. We only had to deal with a bit of echo and some minor reflections. For the setup, we used Rode NT1 condenser mic with an Apogee boom and monitor through the DT-AA0 Pro headphones. We recorded everything in Logic Pro using plugins like EQ and Reverb. During recording process, we focused on capturing clean voice audio in home setup. One issue we noticed was a slight background noise from the fridge in my room, mainly from the compressor. To fix that, we reduced some of low frequencies in post-production, which helped remove most of the noise. Other than that, we didn't run into any major problems. Overall, the setup worked really well for podcast recording and was more than enough for what we needed. In post-production, we kept things pretty simple. We did some light EQ adjustments, mainly reducing low frequency to remove background noise from the room. We also did some basic editing like cutting and arranging the audios. And to make the podcast smoother and easier to follow, we added a few transition effects. Overall, the goal was to keep everything clean and natural, rather than heavily processed.
One of our main successes was being able to create a podcast-style listening experience using a relatively simple home setup. Despite limited equipment and space, the final result still feels clear and engaging. However, we also faced several challenges. Firstly, recording in a bedroom is not acoustically ideal, so we had to deal with issues like room reflections and unwanted echo. During the process, we found that some of these problems could be improved in post-production, for example, by adjusting reverb and balancing the drive and wear levels. Another challenge was making the podcast sound natural rather than scripted. To avoid it sounding monotonous, we explored different podcast styles, including the use of background music and carefully timed transition sound effects. These elements help make the overall listening experience more dynamic and less like simply reading a script. Through this project, we realized that different types of content need different setups to get the best result. We also learned that making a podcast is not just about recording clear voice. It's more like being a radio DJ. You need to use background music, sound effects, and timing to make it more engaging. If it's just plain talking, it can get boring very quickly. Adding these elements really helps make the listening experience more interesting. This experience changed how we think about audio design, especially how to make content more interesting.